Today, what are we doing? Today, we're talking about love. And we're talking about love in particular, what might be called erotic love. And erotic love is a kind of love, of course, that's linked up to romance, that's linked up to sexual attraction. And yet, erotic love, arguably at least, is not the same thing as sexual attraction. There's actually some similarities between the two states, but also some important differences. Now, if the stats hold, most of you will get married, probably 95% of you. And when you get married, presumably you want to be really in love with the person you're getting married to. So how would you differentiate being in love from merely finding someone attractive and beautiful and being infatuated with someone? Well, there are some similarities. So one of them would be intensity. So both finding someone beautiful and being in love is both an intense kind of experience. And secondly, there's a kind of passivity involved in both. You can't really choose who you have erotic love for. And likewise, you can't really choose who you find sexually beautiful, right? If you meet someone, you just kind of do find them beautiful or you don't, but you can't really like twist your own arm and like, I'm just going to make myself find this person beautiful and attractive. Another thing they have in common is immediacy. So typically, at least, when you find someone beautiful, you don't need a month or weeks and weeks to figure that out. You can talk to them and meet them, and often right away you see, oh, this person's totally gorgeous. Or you meet somebody and like, wow, they're really not my cup of tea. But typically, you don't have to wait months to figure that out. And the same thing's true, arguably, at least with being in love. At least some people report what's called love at first sight, right? Maybe your parents or grandparents, they say, I saw grandma across the room at the dance, and right away I knew she was the one for me, right? Many people report that kind of immediacy of being in love. But likewise, many people report a brevity of duration. There's many people who have fallen out of love, or many people who thought someone was so beautiful and so attractive, and then you see them later and you're like, well, no, actually not. Don't find them so beautiful anymore. Arguably, I think sexual attraction is typically at least more immediate, right? That right away you meet someone, you talk to them, you interact with them, and you think, wow, this person's amazing. And is falling in love like that? I would say sometimes it is, but not always, right? So that you do have people who say, and again, you might think of your own grandparents or whoever, somebody who do say things like, well, right away I knew I was going to marry so-and-so. Actually, my wife was like that. She said the second time we went on a date, she tells me, she looked at my hand and kind of a voice said to her in her head, that's your husband's hand. So, I mean, that's second date. So that's pretty early on in a relationship. But is that typical? Is that normal? Well, I don't know if I actually don't know. I mean, I guess what I'd say is it happens. That seems true. But is it typical? Is it the normal way things go? I'm just not sure. Because it seems to me there's a lot of other love stories that people, yes, they find themselves each other beautiful, say, but over time the relationship deepens, and only after 6 months or a year or whatever, finally they really feel like they're in love, right? So that seems possible too. If those things are things that mere sexuality or attraction and being in love have in common, what do they have that's different? Well, arguably there are important differences. So one would be that if you're in love with someone, you might yearn to have sexual acts with them. Now, again, you might choose not to for whatever reason, but you'd at least be attracted to the idea of doing that. But if it's merely a matter of only you're attracted to them sexually, well, that's pretty much all that is attracting you, right? That's all you care about. That's it. There's nothing more to it than that. A second thing seems to be if you're in love, you seek the beloved alone. So when you're in love, the person that you love is irreplaceable. It's a little bit like a mother with her baby. You can't just swap out a new baby for, a mom who has a baby. The mom wants her own baby. And when you're in love, the same thing's true. You don't want some other person. You want this person and this person alone. They're unique. Whereas attraction seems to be much more wide in scope, right? You want whoever's attractive, whoever will give you pleasure. It's not limited or specified just to this one person. When you're in love, you at least want the love to endure forever. I mean, think of all the love songs you've heard, right? The love songs say things like, I'll love you, as long as there's stars in the sky. I'll love you as long as there's, sand on the beach. Love is all about eternity. Whereas mere attraction isn't about eternity, but it's about right now, right? I want you as soon as possible, and you're not really thinking about forever. Being in love, I think, arguably involves also a preoccupation with the whole person. So if you're in love with someone, you are fascinated by their handwriting. You like how they kick a soccer ball. You enjoy watching them sew. Whatever it is they're doing, you think is cool. Whereas merely being attracted to someone is really a preoccupation with them as a potential, at least, sexual partner. You're preoccupied not with the whole person, but just with, you might say, one dimension of the person. Being in love is centered on the beloved, and mere sexuality is much more self-centered, what you can get out of the person that you're with. And arguably, being in love involves a willingness to sacrifice. If you're really in love with someone, you're willing to give to them what they really need. Whereas if you're just attracted to someone, that's it, that seems less likely to lead to sacrifice. You don't really care about sacrificing for them. Is it possible to be truly in love with more than one person? Could you be in love with two or three or four? Obviously, at least I think it's obvious, you could be sexually attracted to more than one person, right? I imagine most of us find multiple people in the world beautiful, but is it possible to be truly in love with two, three, four, however many different people? You wouldn't say, I'm in love with my mother, right? Or I'm in love with my brother. You reserve the phrase, I'm in love with, just for people that, again, a sort of romantic sense of love, not for, loving your grandma or something. And that's exactly what we're going to talk about today. We're talking about love in the sense of erotic love or romantic love, the kind of love you have for someone you're about to get married to, not other senses of love. In English, we say, I love grandma, I love my fiance, and it sounds the same. But in Greek, you would differentiate those kinds of love. And erotic love is the kind of love we're talking about in the symposium. So the symposium is set by a memory within a memory. It starts off by two people talking about this drinking symposium they had before, and they were chatting about the nature of love. And this is a drinking party. And so people are imbibing alcohol, and the people at this party decide to praise love. And again, love understood as erotic love, right? Not love like loving grandma or loving your brother. This is erotic love. The people at this symposium have had or still have erotic relationships with each other. So you might say it's an erotically charged environment in Plato's Symposium. And the speech I asked you to read for today is the speech of Aristophanes. And Plato's Symposium is such a wonderful work. Fortunately, given the constraints of the semester, we can't read the whole thing. But I wanted you to read in particular the speech of Aristophanes, because I think it's the most famous and arguably the most interesting of all the speeches. So the speech basically goes like this, that in the beginning, there were three kinds of people. There was a man-man combination that arose from the sun. And it was like two men conjoined back to back. So there was four arms and four legs and two faces. And then there was another kind of circle person, and that was the woman-woman combination. So that was like two women back to back, again, with four arms and four legs. And they used to roll around kind of like acrobats, getting from place to place. And they were very powerful. And then there was a man-woman combination that came from the moon. And that was like a man and a woman back to back. So these circle people were very powerful, according to the story. They were very self-sufficient. They were godlike. And they were made in the image of the gods. So, the sun is a god. And so the man-man combination is made in that image. And the woman is made like the earth. And then you have the man-woman combination like the moon. And so these human beings were powerful and semi-divine. Now, what happened was that these original primordial circle people rebelled against the gods. And so they wanted to replace the gods. And what happened basically is when they rebelled against the gods decided, look, we got to punish these circle people. They're getting out of control. And so some gods said, what we should do, just kill them all, be done with them. But then other gods said, well, if we kill them all, these humans won't provide us any sacrifices, so we'll be out of luck. So they said, look, what we'll do is we're going to cut them in half, and Apollo turned the head around so that we could see how we'd been cut in half. And from this, erotic love of three kinds arose. So when the circle people got cut in half, if you were originally part of a male-male combination, then you would be a man who yearns to be with another man. If you were part of a female-female circle person combination, you'd be a woman who yearns to be with another woman. And then if you're a part of a male-female circle person originally, then you'd be a man who yearns to be with a woman, or a woman who yearns to be with a man. Now, you might think, aha, what this story is talking about is male homosexuals and lesbians and straight people. And that would be mistaken. Now, why is that mistaken? Well, because until the 19th century, no one thought of themselves as having an identity as a gay man or as a lesbian or as a straight person. That just didn't exist. Just like today, maybe in your own mind, what you really find attractive is people that have blonde hair and green eyes. And you just think that's beautiful. You think that's great. But we don't have in contemporary society sort of a sexual identification where we'd say, hey, I'm a green-eyed, blonde-haired, loving person. That's who I am. That's my identity, right? I mean, people do like that, but no one conceives of themselves as having a special identity because that's what they like. And so too, in the ancient world, were there men who had sex with men? Yes. Were there women who had sex with women? Yes. But those people did not think of themselves as constituting a special kind of person. Oh, I'm gay. Oh, I'm straight. Well, no, they just didn't think of it that way. Again, just like we don't think, oh, I'm a slender, loving kind of person. That's my identity. Or I like people that are big and muscular. That's my identity. I mean, again, you might like thin people, you might like bigger people, but that, again, there's no identity constituted by that desire, you might say. Eros of three kinds arises now. So you have what today we would call lesbian desire, right? A woman desiring a woman. But again, they didn't really think of it as you being a kind of person because, say, a woman desiring a woman or a man desiring a man. It didn't give you an identity, you might say, the way sometimes people think of it now is giving you identity. Oh, I'm gay, I'm straight, well, no, they didn't think of it that way. This idea of erotic love has many modern echoes, you might say. So we speak of becoming one with the beloved. And we say things like, or in the movie Jerry Maguire, he says, you complete me. The idea is when you find your spouse, this is your other half. This is together you make up a whole. And all these phrases, my better half, sometimes spouses say, my spouse is my better half. All these are reflecting, you might say, that this insight of Aristophanes, that erotic love has something to do with completion. And the couple, in a way, is more complete than just one. Speaking of a soulmate, similar idea, or speaking of breaking up, all these are drawing on, you might say, the ideas that Plato's drawing on. I should clarify something about two different Aristophaneses. So Aristophanes was a real person in ancient Greek society. He was the author of a couple of plays, for instance, The Clouds and the Frogs. Now, Aristophanes in this play, or in this dialogue, is the Platonic Aristophanes. And basically, the ancient Greek man Aristophanes and the ancient Greek man Socrates basically made fun of each other. So in one of Aristophanes' plays, he portrays Socrates as a sort of airhead. He's out of it. He's always looking up at the sky and birds poop on him. And he's just kind of an absent-minded philosopher. And I think what's happening here is Socrates' student Plato is returning the favor of portraying Aristophanes in a less than flattering way. The idea is that Plato's kind of making fun of Aristophanes and kind of saying, aha, you have your own eccentricities, you might say. Well, this dialogue, though, is all about erotic love, or in Greek, eros, right? This is not about friendship love. Friendship love is called philia. It's not about that. It's not about storge, a kind of affectionate love. It's not about any of those kinds of love. It's about erotic love, or eros in Greek. So Aristophanes' view, or the Platonic Aristophanes' view, is that love has to do with a kind of completion. It has to do with seeking your soulmate, seeking your better half, etc. And so our love is sort of seeking out for this lost half. Here's one way to put it, that as we currently are, we're incomplete. just a man alone or just a woman alone is incomplete. And so we need our other half to sort of make us complete. Is the idea of Aristophanes that there's one person out there, and if we don't find this one person, we're just never going to be completed, right? Sometimes we talk about it as a soulmate, right? And the idea of a soulmate is, you wander around and you meet a bunch of people, and then one of these people out of everyone on planet Earth right now is your soulmate. And so you hope you find a unique soulmate that fits you. And here we can differentiate between what you might call the inside view of Eros. So when you're in love, you think, oh, you're the one of this person, or you complete me. You're irreplaceable. You're my soulmate. But the outside view of Eros is, and so this would be the view of, your grandma when she's looking at you being in love. It would be, well, she's his type, or he's her type, or you are one of the ones that I could love. Or as grandma could say, it's as easy to fall in love with a rich boy as a poor boy. In other words, it's not as if you have one unique soulmate that's out there for you, but rather there's a whole number of people that you could be completed by, right? Not just this one person, but a whole bunch of people. What do you think is right? Do you believe in the soulmate theory? Do you believe that there's just one person out there? Or do you think, no. Yes, there's a number of people that could complete you, right? There's not just one person who could be your better half. There's a whole bunch of people. Do you believe in the soulmate theory, or do you not believe in the soulmate theory? This idea of the soulmate, I think, just to throw one thing out there, I'm not sure whether it's true, but the worry is if you do believe in soulmates and then you do get married to someone, you might, if the person does something you don't like, then come to the erroneous conclusion, oh my gosh, I must have not married my soulmate, because if I married my soulmate, everything would be perfect forever after. And this person is not making me happy right now, and this person's irritating me, so I must have married the wrong person. So I guess what I worry about is the corollary of the soulmate view, which would be if you find your soulmate, you'll be perfectly happy. The reality is, whoever you marry, and whether you believe in the soulmate theory or not, there almost certainly will be difficult times and trouble and times where things aren't going well. And so the trouble would be if you had the soulmate theory and its corollary of if you find your soulmate, everything goes perfectly, you might dump or abandon a perfectly good person because you had this sort of soulmate view and you thought everything would be perfect if you found your soulmate. In any case, what does this story mean? Well, some people say that the point of Aristophanes' story is that erotic love is distinctly human. So some of the previous speakers had elevated Eros to something divine. So Phaedrus said that erotic love is the oldest of the gods. And other people had made erotic love something less than human. So one of the earlier speakers was Eryximachus. And Eryximachus's view was that erotic love was like the changing of the seasons. It's kind of a subhuman force. Some people interpret Aristophanes as saying, look, the point of the story is that erotic love is not divine, it's not a higher power, nor is it merely an animal or physical impulse. The point is that erotic love is something distinctly human, right? The gods don't have it, and say animals or plants also don't have love. Love is something for us, for human beings. Another possible interpretation of the story is that erotic love is really all about comedy. We have this comic appearance. We've got 4 arms and 4 legs, and we roll around like acrobats. And after the split, how weird it is that we care so much about the union of sexual parts. I mean, no one cares about if you shake hands with someone, but to unite your genitals with someone else's genitals, well, all of a sudden, this is like some big important thing. And of course, sometimes we fall in love or out of love with people that aren't appropriate. There's tons of movies made like this, right? Where there's a wedding being planned and then one of the fiancés falls in love with a wedding planner. We frantically try to get around, of course, with the unintended consequence, at least for male-female unions, of babies. So there's lots of comedy in erotic love. On the other hand, some people think of the point of the story of Aristophanes is depicting erotic love as sexual. So this is a quotation from the Platonic scholar Alan Bloom. He said, sexual acts are at the very core of what Eros is about and are splendid as ends in themselves. It's the fulfillment of erotic longing that's found in sexual union. And it's really the union of bodies that is desired. It's about not a soulmate, really, but a body mate. That's what erotic love is about the physicality of union, not just a spiritual union. So lovers, you might say, are as much body mates as they are soulmates. One other interpretation of the story is that the point of the story is seeking unity. That really the unity includes, but it's not limited to just sexual acts. The goal really is fusing yourself into one. So if you think about erotic love, the lovers, according to Aristophanes, want to be totally united together. This goal of being fused into one is what erotic love is all about. And wholeness and procreativity belong to the couple as a couple, right? A man alone can't procreate, a woman alone can't procreate. You need a man and a woman together. You need this wholeness for procreation. On this view, the couple is originally human, most fully represents the divine image. So we're not in the image of God just as a man alone or as a woman alone, but rather as a couple. And then another view would be erotic love as a tragedy. So this is illustrated by the movie Hedwig and the Angry Inch, where erotic love ends up being sad, being really not about a comedy, but the opposite of that, a tragedy. And why is it a tragedy? Well, we can't, in fact, be fused into one with our beloved. If we're cut off from the other half, we can't reconnect. We can only reconnect very fleetingly and imperfectly. So this original and integrated and unfallen and self-sufficient state is permanently gone. We want to be totally united with the one we love, but in fact, we can never be fully united with the one we love. And even if we could, this would be kind of self-extinction, right? We don't want to be fused into one with someone. So maybe erotic love is like a death wish. That is to say, if we really were fused into one with another person, that would just be the end of us as an individual. Do we want that? Dante in the Divine Comedy depicts two lovers, Paolo and Francesca, as being permanently fused together. And they're not fused together in heaven. They're not fused together in purgatory. They're fused together in hell. So erotic love seems to be not something heavenly, but really ultimately something hellish, a tragedy. So these are different interpretations that scholars have given of this text. Which one of these interpretations do you think is true? Which interpretation of Aristophanes' speech do you find most plausible? That is to say, Eros as a comedy, Eros as a tragedy, Eros as distinctly human, Eros as being all about sexual unity, Eros as being about a deeper unity, not just sexual, but beyond that. Which interpretation of the story do you think is most accurate of the ones I just mentioned to you? I think tragedy certainly is going to loom large if you have the soulmate view of love, right? Because then if your person you love dies or something, well, you're just out of luck. You're really in big trouble. Whereas if you don't have the soulmate view of love, then tragedy would seem to be less likely because there'd be a whole bunch of possibilities, not just one. If you really desire to be totally united with this one person, and then maybe you can't because they die or because their family hates your family and you're living in Verona and you're Romeo and Juliet, the family's getting in the way or something. So tragedy could arise from this desire to be as fully united with someone else as you could. If you're seeking unity with somebody, that is going to give rise to tragedy sometimes, but it also is related to being human because human beings can be unified in a way that, say, human and a plant can't, right? You can't really be fully unified with the plant. Why? Well, because you can't have a conversation with the plant, right? You can't procreate with a plant. You can't, I suppose you could have sex with the plant, sort of, but not really, right? Because the plant's not really having sex with you. Your relationship with the plant just is necessarily limited in a way that your relationship with another human being obviously wouldn't be. Another question that's related is, well, look, Aristophanes may think that erotic love is comedic or tragic or sexual or whatever, but which one do you think is true, right? In other words, if you think about erotic love, is the best way to think about that it is tragic in your own opinion, not Aristophanes' view, but your own view, is the best way to think about it as comedic? Leaving aside for the moment Aristophanes, how do you view erotic love fundamentally? Is it fundamentally about a drive for unity? What do you think is true? Just hooking up with people or having random sex, or is that really erotic love at all? Because I'm not sure it is. I mean, maybe it is, maybe it really is, but I'm not sure you would say to people that just hook up, if you talk to them afterwards or whatever, said, "Are you in love with that person?" I mean, how many of them would say, "Yeah, I'm in love with, this person, of course." I would imagine that a lot of those people, if not all, would say, "Well, no, I'm not in love." One way of understanding erotic love is the desire to be as fully united with someone as you can. Now, that could be unrequited. In other words, I could be madly in love with, Stacy, and Stacy is not in love with me. So to be in love with someone doesn't necessarily mean the other person loves you back. Now, that's great if they do, but sometimes you might be madly in love with whoever and they don't love you back for whatever reason. So it's not so much about whether it's mutual or not, but it would be about more than just sexual passion. In other words, at least if as we've been talking about erotic love, it wouldn't be the case that you'd have erotic love for every single beautiful person in the world. One way to think about it is that if you have erotic love for someone, then you would want to be united with them, including in a sexual way. But if you're in love with someone, you want to be united with the person beyond only sex. In other words, if you're really in love with someone and they said to you, okay, you can have sex with this person, but you can't talk to them, you can't go to the movies with them, you can't eat dinner with them, all you can do is have sex and that's it, you would be not satisfied with that, right? You say, yes, I do want to have sex with this person, but I want more than just that. I want to share meals with them. I want to have them meet my parents. I want to have them go out with my friends. I want to share my life with them. And because my life is more than just sexual activity, I want more than just sexual activity with the person. So that view of erotic love is something like the drive for unity, which would include sexual unity, but would go beyond only sexual unity. So today what we did is we talked all about the story of Aristophanes. I hope you stay healthy. I hope you stay happy. And I'll talk to you guys next time.